Now we're going to be taking a look at more of the three-dimensional tools available within LWCAD 2.5. We're going to start out by taking a look at the Architecture Basic tab, where we have Wall, Floor, Roof, and Stair tool. Start out by using the Wall tool. That's selected. I'm just going to go ahead and start creating sort of a layout. And you can also see that we can snap to the end, and once we do that, it closes off our wall. What we can also do, which is one of the new features of 2.5 as opposed to 2.0, is if we now select in one of our other viewports, we can change the height of our wall. And before in earlier versions, what you would have to do is actually convert your LW curves to polygons and then use the extrude tool. But now it's really nice because we can just go ahead and click in here to raise this up, and it ends up creating our polygons for us right away. And we can create very complex and interesting architecture in a very quick amount of time, a very small amount of time. Another really nice, cool trick is to actually use this tool with Snap Panel. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this right now, open up our Snap Panel. We're going to turn on Angle Snap to 90 degrees. And this is a great way for drawing out floor plans if you're going to be using all 90-degree angle walls. This way we can stay completely on that angle, and allows us to quickly draw out whatever it is that we need to while still working with 90 degrees, so we don't have to worry about any of our edges not lining up or actually having to trace exactly to what it is that we have. And you notice if we go inside of our walls, I'm just going to open up our numeric. You can see we can set this to add, subtract, intersect, just as we normally would. But we can also see that once we start editing these points, that we're outside of our angle snap, and it's really more for our creation rather than our modifying of these points. And I'm going to turn off our perspective snap. And now that we're modifying some of these, you can see that does start to take effect again. I'm going to go ahead and just turn that off. Our angle snap. We could snap that back in place, turn our angle snap back on, and then we can modify these however we want. So we could make more interesting shapes, even with the tool still active. We could change out our different snapping options while we're actually working on our walls. You can also see in the numeric panel we have a lot of other different options. We've got our 2D mode and our 3D mode. And that was what I was showing you before. If I click in our back view right now, it's going to switch us to the 3D mode. And currently right now we're working with curves, our LWCAD curves. Once I switch this to 3D, it's going to change everything over to polygons. So if you want to be creating shapes with the wall tool and you don't want to extrude just yet, just make sure you don't click into your back viewport or your right viewport, or that you don't check on the 3D option. What you can also do is set whether or not you want to create these walls on the inside of your defined points or on the outside of your defined points, the ones you've created. What we can also do is change the offset of our wall, so in other words, the thickness. And then you can also see we have a high and low value. Once I initiate the high value, you can see we've switched over to our 3D, and that's going to adjust our wall height. And our low is going to adjust the bottom part, or our bottom polygon sets, and our points. I'm going to set this back down to 0. We also have our handle and pivot modes available, like we did with a lot of our other tools. And we can also show our angles and distances as well. And I'm just going to hit the spacebar to end that. And our next tool that we have is the floor tool, which also works as a ceiling tool. So I'm going to go ahead and select our floor right now. And I'm going to click on the top and just use this as a ceiling right now. And all we got to do is just click on the point that extends to the top of our wall, and it will automatically create our ceiling or our floor. Open up the numeric panel. You can see we can switch from floor to ceiling, and it automatically knows whether or not we're on the top or the bottom of our wall. So we can change this back and forth very easily to create our floors and our ceilings. We can also change the max freeze error if we are working on curved shapes. We can adjust our height and then also the offset. So we can go a little bit beyond the actual shape that we have. If we take a look, we can see our floor is extending a little bit more, or we could have our ceiling extending a little bit more. And that's very helpful when you're creating roofs, which we'll also move on to that tool. Just going to hit the space bar. And we're going to see when I open up the More tab, we have a roof tool. Now in this case, because of this is a very difficult to roof shape, this is something that typically you're not going to be able to use this roof tool for, because we have this endpoint right here and the way that curves out or jets in. So what I'm going to do is just delete that. I'm going to go back to our wall tool, open our snap panel, make sure that angle snap is on, and I'm just going to draw up a new set of walls. And you can also see that it has remembered my height setting. So if you end your wall tool, it will remember the settings that you had before, which is really helpful when you're creating in-between walls. Because if I've already created this outside walls, and now I wanted to create maybe some inner walls, I can go back to our wall tool and just start drawing out some of our shapes. And you can see that it automatically remembers exactly what we had. So it's a really quick and easy way to draw out floor plans and create them into 3D models. I'm just going to undo that last wall. I'm going to turn off our angle snap, close that out, and now we're going to take a look at the roof tool. I'm going to start out by clicking on our end, and we just want to draw a line defining one side of our roof, because in this case we're going to have to use this tool more than once in order to create a realistic looking roof. So the next thing I want to do is pull out our area, and now we can also see that we're on the bottom. So if we go into our lower viewports, we can click and drag that up to snap to the top of our object. If I open up the numeric panel, we can see that we have a couple of different options. First, you'll notice we have 2-side or 4-side roof type. Select this to a 4-side, and we can see that we start to get more of a bevel type roof. Back to the 2-side, you can see we have that overhang. We can also select whether or not we'd like the front and back walls, which are the areas that are filled in between our wall and the top of our roof. If we go back up a little bit higher, we can see the front back roof offset. So I can adjust this, and now what it's actually doing is extending our roof outward. And currently right now our side roof offset is grayed out, and that's because we have our extrude mode set to inside. If I set this to outside, you can see that we can extend our roof farther than our wall. So it really depends on what it is that you're working on. We can also adjust the wall thickness, and that's mainly going to be our front back wall that it's adjusting. We can also adjust the overall roof thickness in here. So if I wanted to make this maybe a little bit thinner, I could just pull that down. And we can also adjust our slope. So I can pull that down, or I could make it a very steep slope. We can see it looks more like a church now, with that much more steep slope. Just going to pull that back down. And then we can also adjust our base positions, base width, and length within the numeric panel if we don't want to actually be using the snapping options. But now if I want to just join together this other side, just going to hit the space bar, reselect our roof tool, draw out on this end, and then I can just pull that inside, and we want to make sure we snap to the top. And now you can see that doesn't quite match up. One thing I do want to make sure I do is just pull that in so that it is not going inside or protruding through our existing roof and the other side that we created. Go back to our numeric options. We also want to make sure that our slope is going to match up. Just hit the space bar. And now we have a very simple looking house. And once you get the tools down, this sort of an object right here can really be created in under 10 seconds, or even less. Because it is an extremely quick method of creating things. And we now have all of these great new options to create fantastic architectural details in little or no time. And the last option we're going to take a look at within our architectural basics section is our Stair tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and just select a new layer. We'll just keep that house in the background. We're going to go and select our Stair tool. And the first thing we want to do is define the width of our stairs. And if you already have areas cut out for this within a house, in one of your floors, then you can use the snapping options to snap to the specific endpoints to get exactly the correct dimensions. And then all you got to do is just pull out the tool and it creates stairs as we pull it out. And then our numeric options, if we pull that up, we can see that we can set our step dimensions. We have a couple of different options. We can set this from solid or a slab. And we can see those changes. So whether or not we wanted something open underneath, or we just wanted to have it all solid. Our step dimension we can also set to automatic. But you're not always going to get exactly what it is that you want. In this case we have it set to fixed, which means we can define our step length and our step height. If we set this to automatic, then we can just change a step count. We also need to change our step height. And this way we can just define how many steps we want in a specific area, and it'll just do it automatically. So if you're not working entirely in proportion or in the correct dimensions, you can easily create stairs in an area that you want. Maybe if you just know you want 12 stairs to fit in the specific area, this is a very easy way of doing so. If you need to be more precise, then of course you're going to want to use your fixed options. We can also set this to go downward or upward, so we can flip this back and forth. And we can also lower our overall object with our stair low, and then we have the width and the length options as well, which we can set either numerically or using the interface and the snapping tools. So now with LWCAD 2.5, we've got a really fantastic tool for creating really good looking stairs. I'm going to hit the space bar, and if we just zoom in and take a look at these stairs, we can tell that they're pretty basic as far as their shape. And if you do need to get maybe a little bit of extra depth, because you can see that at some points when we look at certain objects from certain lighting angles, in this case if we take a look at these stairs right now, we can't really tell they're stairs. So a really easy fix for that would just to be to bevel all of these different polygons that we have. So if I just select all of our stair polygons, I can just zoom in fairly close, or we can do this numerically. I'm just going to hit B on the keyboard, and we can just bevel that. And now if we zoom out and take a look, no matter what angle we're at, we're always going to be able to tell that those are stairs, because we're getting that nice highlight along our edge. We take a look at that in the perspective view. We can see that looks a little bit better. So it's a good way to create more realistic looking stairs, is just to add that little tiny bit of a bevel on there. And then we don't have to worry about incorrect lighting or more of a less of a CG look while we're doing this as well.